In this video, I'm going to focus my attention on her upper body, on the arms, the cleavage, the collarbones and the neck, and I'm going to increase the contrast. I just want to bring up the highlights, the brightest areas, and to darken shadows a little bit. In order to do this, I'm going to create another adjustment layer. So let's click on this little icon here. Let's select curves, and again, in a very similar way as we are working with the hair, I'm going to sample from the photograph. So with the targeted selection tool selected with this first icon, I'm going to sample on the brightest part. So let's say I can sample around here, and on the darkest, so I can probably sample around this part. And to increase the highlights, I'm going to pull this point that was sampled in the bright part. As you can see, if you look at this part of the intersection line, there is this circle jumping, and it's dynamically indicating which part of the image I'm sampling. If I would move over the dark part in the image, the circle appears here in this part representing the dark tones in the histogram, and if I go to the opposite side, to the brightest side, the circle jumped from here to this part of the intersection line. Okay, so we have sampled the brightest part of the upper body of the model and the darkest. So let's now pull this control point upwards, and that way we will increase the highlights in the photograph. If I switch off this layer, you can see that the highlights got stronger. And now to make this effect even stronger, I'm going to slightly pull this point downwards to introduce more contrast to the image. I have to be careful. I have to keep my eye on the histogram, and I need to watch this line, since I don't want her arm to be melting with the window. She was backlit with the natural light, with the sunlight. However, the result I have achieved now is extremely exaggerated, so I have to pull this point downwards and just keep my eye on those adjustments. As I can still mask this layer, however, I don't want to go too far, definitely. So this point can be probably left around this part. My point now is to introduce the nice highlights and control how they work in the upper part of the body. I can ignore the hair, I can ignore the face and the background, because I'm going to mask this layer after applying those adjustments. So this part of the cleavage is getting a little bit flat if I push it too far. Actually, I can go even like this, maybe a little bit less. Okay, so I'm happy with the result. I can sample maybe one more control point from her collarbone. So let's sample from here. I can pull this point a little bit upwards, but I don't want to lose the contrast. Okay, so I'm happy with the result I have achieved. Now the upper body is much more three-dimensional. It really makes the whole image much more effective. So let's now inverse the mask. As you remember, the adjustment layer always comes with the mask added automatically, and when the mask is white, we can see all those changes at 100% strength. So I just want to add them gradually, working with a brush in exactly the same way as I was working with the hair, as you remember in the previous video when I applied those subtle highlights. So let's switch on the layer and let's just inverse the mask. So I'm selecting the mask thumbnail. It's important to have the mask selected, not the adjustment layer thumbnail. So let's click on the mask thumbnail and let's hit Command I on the keyboard to inverse the mask. Now none of those changes are visible. And I need to be painting with a soft white brush to reveal those changes. So I want to focus on the upper part of her body. Opacity 20 is fine. I'm painting with the white color, so everything is set properly. I can maybe increase opacity to 30 and start working on the image. As you remember, when the mask was white, I lost the arm. It melted completely with the background, with the light applied from the window. But now when I introduce those adjustments in a very controlled way with the brush, when I'm working with the mask, I'm able to maintain very high level of control and apply those adjustments in the specifically chosen areas. So I can darken the face a little bit as well. However, 20-30 opacity is too much. I'm going to go to 10 and just go very slightly over the cheekbone. Let's toggle on and off. So basically the result I wanted to achieve is ready. I have added these beautiful highlights and strengthened the shadows in her upper body. I can maybe go over the arm a little bit stronger. However, the light on her right hand side of her body is much softer. As you see, the main source of light is directing from the left hand side and is lighting her right cheek, her right part of the body, and moving towards the right hand side of the photograph, the light is getting much softer and it's much more diffused. I have applied small reflector to introduce some soft highlights. However, the simplicity and the beauty of this image is based on this one source of light and the way it shapes the model's body, how it reveals the shape, how it reveals the face, the hair, her upper body, and how it leaves rest in the soft shadow. Okay, so that way we have controlled the light and shadow on the upper body. Let's now focus on the eyes, and in the next video we are going to introduce a little bit more brightness in her eyes, especially in these darker areas. So let's move ahead to the next lecture and let's start working on her eyes.